The tutorial this week is for yarn dyeing with Kool-Aid and hand painting. Last time I did a yarn dyeing tutorial, I did dyeing in a mason jar with acid dyes. And this time I decided to do the Kool-Aid because some people just don't feel comfortable using the acid dyes, and they want something that's food safe that they can use in their kitchen and not have to worry about contaminating stuff. So I did do a tutorial on that, and I show you how I mixed the Kool-Aid and my ratios and stuff like that too. But here is the skein that I dyed up, so you'll be able to see in a few minutes how that all worked. And it was a lot of fun. I just used a bunch of different colors, and it was really fun. So I didn't reskein it. Sometimes I will reskein it so you can see what it might look more like once it's knitted up. But I didn't do that. I just twisted it because I don't really need to reskein it. And there you go. So here is the tutorial on yarn dyeing with Kool-Aid. I hope you enjoy it. My last tutorial, I showed you how I use acid dyes, and I know that some people are uncomfortable with using acid dyes and would like something a little bit more food safe, so this is how I do it with Kool-Aid. Now, what I will suggest with the Kool-Aid is that unless you just want to experiment and just try different things, I highly recommend taking small samples of yarn and using the Kool-Aid and making basically swatches of what each color does and what how the color turns out. But this is how I mix my colors. I use some vinegar, and if you have watched my last tutorial, you'll know that I don't do a lot of measuring. I just kind of throw it together. But I do use about a fourth of a cup of vinegar with 3 packets of Kool-Aid. And then I add some warm water to the mix to bring it up to about a cup. And then just give it a quick stir to make sure that all the Kool-Aid is dissolved. I have here on my counter, I have some saran wrap to protect my counter a little bit. And it's easier for the saran wrap to stick to your counter if you just wet the countertop just slightly before you put the saran wrap down. And I am using some squeeze bottles today. I'm just going to pour it into the squeeze bottle. I have a little bit of Kool-Aid on my fingers. You have to be careful about that. Okay, so now I have my colors, and I am ready to paint my yarn. Now, what I have done is I have soaked my yarn in water and vinegar. Here's what I did. I soaked it in water and vinegar before I got started. And I have a couple of pictures that I will show you of how it starts. Because the thing is you don't want to push the yarn down into the water. You want to let it slowly get down into the water, because then you know that all of the fibers are absorbing that water. You want the yarn to be completely saturated and when you get ready to start this. So I will insert here some pictures of how the process went when I put the yarn on top and let it just slowly go down on its own. Okay, so it does take a few hours for that to take place, but once it's all completely submerged, you're ready to get started. So like I said, I have some saran wrap on my counter here, and I'm going to lay out my yarn just in a long, like kind of like a strip, but I'm going to try and separate it a little bit so I can get the color in there, you know, but I don't want the sides to touch. If I don't want to have, I don't want these sides to touch because I don't want maybe the colors that are on this side. So I'm just going to spread it out a little bit so I can get the color in there. And you know what? I need to put some gloves on because Kool-Aid does stain your hands too. So I don't want to do that. And I will be using my hands a little bit during this process. So, okay, so then all I'm going to do is take, I want to make sure that I'm completely on the saran wrap. I should have put two layers down, but I only put one. So, but what you're going to do is just going to take your color and you're going to squirt it on your yarn. And you don't want to use a whole lot of water, and maybe have a paper towel available to catch any excess that isn't getting absorbed right into the yarn. And also you're going to want to spread apart the areas to make sure you're getting that color to go all the way through. And it's really up to you how wide you make your color areas, if you're going to want to blend your colors. You just take each color as you go. Now, what I have found is that when you're dyeing yarn, you want to work in odd numbers. And this is true for any kind of artistic type of thing. For some reason, odd numbers is more pleasing to the eye. So what I like to do is I like to either use an odd number of colors, or I space out my colors in odd numbers. Like maybe I'll do 2 or 3 reds or 5 reds, like spaces like this in my skein. But if you do small segments like I'm doing here, then I don't think that the odd quantity is going to be an issue. So I'm going to go ahead and complete this, and then I will let you come back and see it when it's all done. I do want to stop and tell you one quick thing. You will notice as you are putting the color on that any water that might come out, you might see is clear. And that means that all the dye in the Kool-Aid is absorbing into the yarn, which is exactly what you want. If you find that you have a lot of excess water that is not clear, then you're probably putting a little bit too much on that one area. So you want to move on to another area, or just check to make sure that you're getting all of that that yarn in that one area, because it should be absorbing right into the yarn. But if you're finding that the excess water that you're mopping up, if too much of it is, because sometimes you splash and it doesn't get right on the yarn, and you'll be mopping that up as well. But if you are putting it right on the yarn, see, just like that, it should be absorbing right into the yarn, and most of the excess water that's coming off should be clear. Which is why if you are seeing that excess dye, that your colors will bleed more. Now, if that's the technique or the look that you're going for, then that's fine. But just know that if the water is not clear, then your colors are going to bleed a little bit more.
I threw a wish in the well. Don't ask me, I'll never tell. I looked at you as it fell, and now you're in my way. I trade my soul for a wish, pennies and dimes for a kiss. I wasn't looking for this, but now you're in my way. Your stare was holding, ripped jeans, skin was showing. Hot night, wind was blowing. Where you think you're going, baby? Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number, so call me maybe. It's hard to look right at you, baby, but here's my number, so call me maybe. Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number, so call me maybe. And all the other boys try to chase me, but here's my number, so call me maybe. You took your time with the call, I took no time with the fall. You gave me nothing at all, but still you're in my way. I beg and borrow and steal at first sight, and it's real. I didn't know I would feel it, but it's in my way. Your stare was holding, ripped jeans, skin was showing. Hot night, wind was blowing. Where you think you're going, baby? Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number, so call me maybe. It's hard to look right at you, baby, but here's my number, so call me maybe. Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number, so call me maybe. And all the other boys try to chase me, but here's my number, so call me maybe. Before you came into my life, I missed you so bad. I missed you so bad. I missed you so, so bad. Before you came into my life, I missed you so bad. And you should know that I missed you so, so bad. It's hard to look right at you, baby.
There's a fire starting in my heart, reaching a fever pitch, and it's bringing me out the dark. Finally, I can see you crystal clear. Go ahead and sell me out, and I'll lay your ship bare. See, I'll leave with every piece of you. Don't underestimate the things that I will do. There's a fire starting in my heart, reaching a fever pitch, and it's bringing me out the dark. The scars of your love remind me of us. They keep me
And now once you have gotten all of your color on, you're going to want to make sure that both sides of your yarn are exactly the way you want them, because if you flip it over, you might see that there's a little spot that you would like to get a little bit more color, so then you can add a little bit more. Just make sure that everything is exactly how you want it. If you filled in all the white spots, or if you want to fill in a little bit more color other places or what have you, make sure that it's on both sides of the yarn, because if you leave it flat, you might not realize that there is a space on the opposite side that was face down when you were working with it that isn't quite colored as well as you'd like. Also, you'll notice that each one of my colors, I did different sizes of the blocks in different spots, so that will help with the variegation of the yarn. You just never know unless you have specific planned out places of where your color is going to go and how it's going to look when it is completely knit up. So, and once you have that all done, then you can either just take the paper towels like I was, and if I show you, if I take a brand new paper towel and push it on this, all the water that I'm getting out of this is clear, and that's exactly what you want. That means that you did not use too much color, and all the color has absorbed into the yarn. Now you can take paper towels and do this and get all of the excess water out, or you can use a salad spinner or other type of water absorption thing to get the excess water out. I'm just going to use the salad spinner really quickly. And you'll see all the water in there is pretty much clear. I think the milkiness of it is from that blue raspberry Kool-Aid. And then once it's all done, you still need to heat set it. And how I do that is I just go ahead. Usually I'm only doing 1 or 2 skeins. This is still feeling quite full of water, so I'm just going to wring a little bit more out just by squeezing it gently in the sink. So once you're all set, then you can just wrap it up in the saran wrap that's on your counter. And you want to make sure that you separate the 2 sides, that you have 2 separate sides, because if there perhaps is some extra dye that's kind of loose in there that may or may not spread, you don't want it to spread if at all possible. And then you roll it up. And you put it in your microwave. I usually put it in a microwave safe dish, and I will put it in for 2 minutes, then let it cool to completely cool to touch. Then I will put it in for another 2 minutes, and then again let it cool completely to touch. Okay, so here is how it comes out, and it's still a little warm, not too bad after it's had time to set. And you just take it out of the bag and you wring out any additional water that still may be excess before you hang it up. Sometimes I like to use the sham wows. I think I mentioned that on my last dyeing tutorial. And there's the finished product, and it will be so interesting to see what it looks like all knit up. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you will check out some of my other tutorials as well. Thanks so much. Bye.